All right, so how's it going, everybody? We are here at the Windsor Beer Exchange. I get to hang out with Rahiem and Amiri from Blac Rabbit. How's it going, guys?
Good. How's it going?
Thanks for joining us. We just finished doing a couple of performance videos downstairs. You guys are incredible, man.
Thank you.
So we always start on the podcast. Typically, we do one-on-one conversations here, right? The reason I was cool with sitting down with the two of you is because you guys are brothers, right? Mm-hmm. Grew up in the same house. How old are you guys?
23.
Twins. All right. See, I didn't even put that shit together. So like, just all right. So that's okay. So tell me about the house you grew up in. Then, born and raised in.
We were born and raised in Bed-Stuy in New York.
Okay, so we have a very Canadian audience here. Talk to me about what Bed-Stuy is. How would you describe it?
So it was it's a very, at the time, it was a very low-income community. Very, as far as music and culture is concerned, very based around hip-hop and jazz and R&B. There were still remnants of jazz from like the 80s and 70s, I think.
Like
there were
jazz clubs?
Yeah, there was a lot. There was like, if you walk like 3 or 4 blocks away, sometimes on weekends there'd be like live jazz music and stuff. My grandpa.
Do you remember that? Like, do you remember walking through and hearing that stuff?
Yeah.
How did it affect? Like, how? Like, what? Give me one of those memories.
Let's see. So, I mean, well, this isn't a jazz-related one, but one of the biggest memories I had was when we were about, I think, 10 or 11, my mom invited me to Dave Chappelle's block party, which was being filmed on that, like, couple streets down from where we were living.
Okay, how old were you at the time?
We were 10 or 11, so we didn't really understand the significance of it. I think I was a little sick and I ended up staying in, but then when the movie came out, I just, was pretty mad that I missed it because like Kanye West showed up, Mos Def showed up. It was just some of the greatest performers. Lauryn Hill was one of my favorites.
Did you end up going?
No, I didn't go either.
So you both missed it?
Oh yeah, we both missed it. Yeah. And Bed-Stuy was characteristically in the early 2000s and the 90s and before that, like kind of a rough neighborhood. So that was where like Biggie Smalls was kind of grew up around there, and like I guess with the music that Amiri and I were listening to when we were young, we didn't really, and just not even just the music, but our style and just the way we were raised, it was very, very different. So like people wouldn't even assume that we were from Bed-Stuy growing up.
So talk to me about that. So tell me about mom and dad, the family, that kind of thing, because clearly mom and dad weren't listening to the same thing everybody else in the neighborhood was.
Yeah, for sure. So our mom, she listened to a wide array of things, everything from Massive Attack, Radiohead, Bjork, The Police, lots of like 80s new wave music.
Duran.
Duran is one of our favorites. We love Duran. And then our grandfather, he's a jazz musician. He plays saxophone.
Okay.
And our grandmother used to play Beatles records since we were really, really young.
All right.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your family and music, because clearly your entire family, going back generations, has kind of stood next to the standard, right?
Yeah.
So what's that about? How come you come from the crazy family?
I don't know where it started, but I guess our mom is always, and our family before has always been raised in a very like non-traditional kind of setting. Non-traditional meaning, I guess, we didn't really listen to the kind of music that everyone was listening to. We didn't really dress the same way everyone else was dressing. I don't know why, it just happened to be that way, because we have such a mix of like, I guess, culture in our... Yeah, musically, from a musical perspective, like our uncle, my grandfather's brother, they were both jazz musicians. My grandfather was a saxophone player. My uncle was a drummer, and he played with a lot of big jazz heads. He played with what was it? Cannonball Adderley. Our grandfather was actually about to play with Stevie Wonder the night my mom was born. So
really?
he had to run home. He wanted to be with his wife, obviously our grandmother, when our mom was being born, but he was like and he was fired because of that.
Really?
Also, we found out when we were in our like early teens that my mom was doing one of those ancestry websites, and she was trying to bring the family together, and apparently like Prince reached out to her and said that like my grandfather is Prince's second cousin, so we brought him into the whole family circle there.
That's kind of incredible.
Yeah.
So I have two major questions, or two specific questions about growing up in that house. First, I want to know, from your perspective as kids, was it, because growing up in Bed-Stuy, your only influence isn't just mom and dad and the family. You eventually leave that house, right? And there's other kids in the neighborhood. There's people that you're hanging out with, and they are not listening to the same stuff you are. And I mean, I know for me growing up, music is what brought people together. So what was that like with you guys?
So yeah, for a while, I think I had a streak where I was like trying to, get into the music that was on the radio, just, to try to fit in. Like when you're young, you're trying to fit in with everybody and stuff like that. But we actually ended up going to an alternative education school, a free school that like allowed us to build our own curriculum for a very young age.
Okay.
Probably we were
Fifth grade.
Fifth grade we left a public school and went to the school. And after a couple years we discovered music. Our grandparents bought us the Beatles Rock Band video game. And
Nice.
we obsessed over all the Beatles songs. That's how we started, covering them. And at our school we built a music studio in the back of our gym.
Okay.
So we were able to pretty much practice wherever we wanted, whenever we wanted.
And we were into for a while, because of that school and because it was so small and it was like people from all walks of life going to that school. I never really, growing up, after we left public school, we never really felt like an urge to fit in after that. It was very accepting of
Because it was kind of an
everything that we
eclectic
liked.
group or school to kind of come up in. Right?
And all the kids by nature, the whole foundation of the school was extremely open-minded. So like most kids and teachers even who attended or went to the school in some way were involved and very open-minded, and they were always like, oh, that's interesting, what are you listening to? There was natural curiosity about everyone.
Yeah, our teachers put us on to some really good indie bands too, like Deer Hunter and Radiohead,
Tame
Impala.
So did you feel any resistance? Like do you have memories of people around you kind of like pushing back against your musical choices, your artistic choices?
There were, I guess, so there are sometimes I like to divvy up our family into two sects. There's our mom's side of the family. They kind of actually put us on to most of the music that we're into, and then there were certain people that we knew in our family who would be like, oh, why are you listening to that? Not like they wouldn't put it down or anything, and they weren't ever really harsh about it, but there were times where they'd be like, oh, what is that? Or what are you listening to?
Yeah.
Because most people look at us and they assume that I guess we don't listen to the stuff we're not listening to the stuff that we're supposed to listen to.
Right.
But our dad's side of the family actually, my dad, he's a guitar player. He was a guitar player. He also played French horn and trumpet in high school. And he used to, play us to sleep with Spanish classical melodies.
Nice.
And that was definitely, I'm realizing now how big of an influence that was on me, just growing up and watching him play the guitar. And
he also gave us a way bigger appreciation for hip hop and stuff that too.
And funk. He was a big funk and soul guy.
That was
soul
actually
and
my next question, because I almost wonder, because you guys are so clearly connected with the Beatles and that style of music, I wonder if I don't know if rejection is the right word, but is it almost do you almost wear being away from sort of the, as you said, like the what you're supposed to listen to, right? Like, is that something that you almost wear as a badge? Like you wear it as like, no, we don't go in that direction, or is it just like, fuck it, we're into whatever?
Well, when we were like growing up and when we were in high school, it was cool. We were hanging out with like the alternative rock scene, so it was cool to rip on Miley Cyrus and Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift to be like, oh, this shit is lame.
Right.
But like now,
certainly wore it as a badge. When we were 15,
when we were young.
16.
But now we've got like, now I think we have such like an appreciation for just music as a whole, and that there's just good music and bad music in every genre. So it's like, we don't really like to discriminate anymore. I mean, Amiri and I might just make like a hip hop record at some point. I mean, not with us rapping.
Yeah, we don't
like,
but we could do hooks and like beats.
Right.
Yeah, we could
hooks
do
and
that.
beats.
Yeah.
So tell me, I'm fascinated with the school that you guys went to. Was it in your neighborhood? Was it like, how did that become part of your life? Do you know, or was that just something that was kind of foisted upon you?
Well, I was struggling. Well, like a major part of it was actually that I was struggling in elementary school and public school.
How so?
Well, I was just like, I was really bad at my schoolwork, to put it simply. But our teachers like diagnosed me with like some condition called like learn different. I don't know. It's something
LD.
really LD something. So I was like prescribed with like some like behavioral meds and stuff like that. And my mom was like, she was already anti the kind of established public school idea already.
Right.
And then that was like the nail in the coffin, where she was like, all right, I'm pulling you guys out and I'm putting you into public school.
What did mom do for a living?
She's been many things. She's a loctician, so that she does our hair.
Oh, okay. I was like,
She also
she
she's doing stained glass. She's actually refurbishing stained glass windows for cathedrals and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of incredible. She seems like your mom seems like a journeyman is the wrong word, but like just a person that is very much about art and sort of like exploring the world. And am I reading that right?
She very much wants to live off like, off the grid, so to speak.
Yeah.
And like we're into like environmentally sustainable houses, like solar, wind powered houses, stuff like that.
Yeah. Did she do that? Like, did she?
We're planning on it. I think the band, like, it's one of the goals for me to have like a what they call an Earthship. Yeah, it's a solar powered house.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's dude. I've spent so much time looking at like people who like van life people.
That's what my mom does too. She looks into all the people who live out of their cars and RVs and all these alternate forms of living.
Yeah, and do you guys pull any influence out of that? Like,
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I would live out in an RV, like for sure.
Right.
As long as I could build like a small studio in there, I'd be totally fine.
That's hilarious. Okay, so you guys, music is how? When do we start first picking up instruments? It sounds to me music is almost like part of your life before life is part of your life.
Yeah, like, I mean, we'd always been musical since we were young. We used to sing like Disney musicals and stuff.
Yeah.
Just, like,
we were
old
like
footage.
4. There's so much old footage that my grandparents took of us singing Hercules and Mulan and Tarzan.
But then we didn't pick up instruments until we were like 16.
Really?
Yeah.
It took you that long?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
Because like I'm assuming in the house the stuff is around, right?
It's so funny. It's so interesting. I did a gradual leap. In high school, I went. We took we had a small amount of time where we went to high school, like a public high school.
Okay.
And I went, and it was an arts high school, so I went for acting, and then I eventually switched over my major to musical theater. We eventually got into a musical theater ensemble where we like refound our love for singing, I suppose.
Okay.
And we started understanding harmonies a lot more. And I think that definitely led up to us eventually being like, doing the music.
Because it almost seemed to me like when you were talking about going to an alternative school, like my stupid head like just pictured fame, but apparently it was not arts based, right? It was just kind of a different, like the original, like the first not public school that you went to. It wasn't arts based?
No, it wasn't. It was whatever based. Like literally you could, if I wanted to study the history of video games, I could do that.
Okay.
Like and kids there decide on the rules, decide on the classes. There's no curriculum, there's no tests, no grades.
Well, so that's clearly just bedlam, right? So everybody just came out. They're all crazy.
Anarchy.
Yeah, right. Everybody's Antifa, right?
Yeah.
But what was the general attitude coming out of that?
Just acceptance.
Yeah.
The ability to think outside of the box.
That's a crazy fucking idea, eh?
Yeah.
Independence. I mean, there were graduation projects, there was, regents exams that you had to pass legally in order to like actually graduate. But other than that, it was pretty free flowing. But in that way, it was very much like college. It prepared you for college in the way that like you were responsible for your own education. It wasn't like someone is barking down your neck like you got to get this done and this done, like a high school teacher would be on your back every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you said you struggled in the public system initially, right? Did you as well, or?
I mean, no, not to the extent that he did.
Did you find an immediate difference?
Yeah, I found an immediate difference. I mean, the first like year that I spent at that school, I was like role playing and like just doing kid stuff, just going to the park every day, just playing. But then I started to actually just try to find what really interested me and made me tick, and I started to figure out what I wanted to spend my time on, and I think that helped a lot. I think it helped us like think outside of the box. And
that's usually how it happens. Like you get it out of your system, the playing and the video games and the trips and stuff like that, and then you start to ask yourself like, why am I here? This isn't day camp.
This isn't all there is. This isn't all
school,
there is.
like,
and I think every kid has like some sort of potential, some sort of thing that they need to let out. And in an environment like that where it's like you kind of create your own destiny, so you're able to kind of find that instead of spending so much time overworked on like homework and tests and grades and the standard curriculum. I mean, not that, and I'm not even knocking public school either, because I think that works for certain people. There are certain people who are really good at retaining information and like and doing that work, but I think there are also people who benefit really well from that kind of environment.
You'll have to forgive me. You guys are probably used to doing different sorts of interviews. It's just I'm so fascinated with the idea of education to begin with that I love the opportunity to talk to somebody who's actually like grown up in one of the alternative systems, right? Because this has been the thing that's been talked about since back in the 60s, but there's not a lot of, like, mostly it's just, words, right? Yeah. But you guys have actually, like, you are the result of, you know what I mean? And I almost wonder, and I guess it's sort of like, it's almost like asking what it's like to be black, but like do you have a perspective on what it's like coming up through that system versus what it's like coming up? Like, do you have friends that you can directly compare?
Yeah, I mean, just the idea that I guess I have friends that I mean, it's weird because there are people who are happy in both scenarios. Right. But like I generally feel that a lot of my friends who have graduated that school as well just feel like really fulfilled, and they're just chasing what they want to do, and they just feel there's like a kind of like a spark about them because they've been told that their opinion is valuable for a very young age. They weren't like reprimanded so hard and taught to get in line and do what is asked of them. They're actually able to ask like critical questions and think outside the box, and I think that's really critical.
So interesting to me. Okay, I'm gonna leave this topic.
Yeah.
But it's I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah,
because I honestly could talk about this for another 5 hours. But your story is so interesting to me. So you guys get the instruments, you start playing, you're in love with the Beatles because of Rockstar. You don't know how many people in your age I've talked to that got their influence and like got their start in music from that video game. Yeah, either Rockstar or Guitar Hero, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, right. So it's Rockstar Beatles is the one that gets you.
Beatles Rock Band.
Beatles Rock Band. Yeah, that's it. So talk to me about how you get started busking.
We actually about 3 or 4 years ago, our mom was going to Puerto Rico to do a B&B, breakfast in bed service, and we missed her, long story short, and we just wanted to raise money to go out there.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got a heart tugger on top of it? Okay.
We were 17, and I mean, yeah, to be honest with you, it even worked pretty well on the subways. We were 17 years old, and we're like, we're trying to go to see our mom in Puerto Rico. We busked for about like 2 or 3 days, and we made enough for round trip tickets for the both of us.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you just, this was like, okay, let's try it?
Yeah. And then years later, we settled into dead-end jobs at like our local supermarkets and stuff like that. And one day I was like, you know that thing that we did that made us a crap ton of money last time? We should just do that instead of working these jobs.
Right.
So we were like, it took a little while for us to muster up the courage to actually quit, because with that kind of job, it's not consistent money.
Right.
You don't know. You might go out and have like a shitty day one day and you have to pay your rent. So there's a lot of like...
There were a lot of doubts.
There's a lot of contemplation
worries
before we actually pulled the plug.
Yeah.
And we started doing it full time. About like, we would do it like 4 or 5 days a week, and we were busking. Usually, we would start out on the trains, and we would do like a whole train line. For the F train was our favorite train, so we'd go up from Queens all the way down to Brooklyn, and then back up again twice.
Okay.
And then
talk to me about the process, because like it's New York's, it's not an easy town.
No.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and forget all the, if you can make it there, you'd be lucky to make it to the end of the block sometimes. Like, right? So is there like you're on a train, there's cops around, do you have to deal with that? Is there is there a permit system for this stuff? Okay, so talk to me about all that shit.
Okay, so one of the biggest worries actually was that we didn't have a license.
Okay.
We missed there's like one specific area of time where you're supposed to like submit a
demo
audition demo.
Okay.
To the transit authority, because they basically hold auditions, and if you're good enough, you get in.
Okay.
But we missed it a couple times, but we still did it anyway. There are a lot of performers that still, get away with it.
Right.
But it was still a constant worry. Just, on the trains, it's like super looked down upon by the police.
We've been shut down by the police a few times.
But we've also had times where the police would just give us money. They would be like, you guys sound great. Like, we would be doing like All My Loving, and I saw her standing there, and they would just look at us and, just throw some money in the jar, which was...
Right.
Yeah. And at times,
cool.
New York is also a pretty tough crowd to please.
Yeah.
But it's also...
people.
But it's also like, if you're good, like, people are standoffish at first. But
Right.
a lot of times, like, once you get like halfway through that song, you start to get people to warm up to it and stuff.
Well, it's also a city that, and I'm saying this completely from Hollywood, because I've never been. I've been fascinated with New York for a long time, but I've never managed to get there. But it also seems like a town that's sort of like prepared for, all right, yeah, you're one of them, and I'll stand around and watch you for a little bit. Like, they're used to entertainers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you said, if you're not complete garbage, maybe they will stop and listen. If you got a couple of people paying attention, they know how to form a crowd.
Yeah, we've also had our share of off days where we're playing for 6 hours in the heat, and thousands of people are like walking past us every day. And sometimes you're just playing your heart out, and they're just walking right past you.
Not
Don't
at
even
all.
look you in the eye or anything.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't blame anybody. Like, they're going about their lives, their job, whatever their issues are. But sometimes it felt a little like disencouraging a little bit.
Did you guys look at busking as its own art form, or was this just a way to play music?
Not at first, but then as we started to learn kind of the tips and trades, because I mean, there's a whole community of people under this subway system that are like busking every single day, and we'd see them on a pretty regular basis. And then we started to notice a pattern in the way that people traveled.
Okay.
So we would take advantage of like rush hours, morning and evening rush hour, or we know which train stations were the most populated. It's actually a lot more depthful than it seems, because a lot of people think they just like set up anywhere and they just play. But like, if you want to maximize how much you're making, how much of an impact your band is making in the public eye, then you gotta like be conscious and strategic about where you're setting up and when.
Right. So you guys are set up. and I don't know if it was your own video or somebody else took a video. What was the story on this?
So there was an Instagram blogger who calls himself like the talent scout of New York City.
Okay.
He's called New York Nico, and he uploaded a video of us playing 8 days a week.
Okay.
And like when we got home, we realized it had about like 10 or 14,000 views or something like that. And then we wake up the next morning and our dad just like knocks on the door and he's like, 10 million views. And we just look at each other and we're like, oh.
Yeah, and I was
wow,
like, and that was the crazy part. At that point, I was like, oh, wow. And then we went out bust again that day. Then we came back home. My dad was like 17 million. I was like, oh shit. And I went to bed. I woke up the next morning. He was like 25 million. Then I was like, oh. And then people were tagging Jimmy Fallon and Ellen DeGeneres and Paul McCartney under the videos. And then Ellen and Jimmy Fallon's teams reached out to us, and we did the interview with them, and we picked Ellen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was one or the other?
Exclusive things. We had to pick one or the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that process, because nobody talks about that part of it. They just talk about, oh, we got on the Ellen show. Talk to me about the process of like, now you've got two competing offers, right? Like, talk to me about that.
So one of the stagehands and co-producers of the Ellen show gave us a Skype call one day, and she wanted us to perform it on the Skype call in front, so she could confirm it and, tell Ellen, make sure it was good. So we performed. She, it was a little bit, difficult to get used to because they wanted like these sparkly, bright, bubbly personalities, and we were
the show.
Yeah.
And we were like also like on top of already not being super bright and bubbly people. We were also pretty sleep deprived that day. We thought we fucked up the interview so bad. We were just like, and then they were like, we didn't think we would get a call back, but then we did.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
So you thought you screwed up the early interview, like the pre-interview?
Just the talking, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Bit, yeah.
So all right. So then you get the call back to do the show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, wait. You that happened before or after you had chosen between Jimmy and Ellen?
It was.
I was around the same time.
Okay. So how was the process for Jimmy?
We didn't really we got as far as our manager talking to them before we decided.
Yeah.
They were actually, the funny thing is, I think the Fallon show was going to have a bit where we were going to go busking on the train station with Paul McCartney and Jimmy Fallon.
And
Questlove. But the thing is that I think Paul was busy and overbooked, and they said that it was too last minute. And so they were going to have us on the show regularly like any of their other guests.
Right.
And then we picked Ellen, I guess, because she had like a little broader of an audience. She has like a larger audience.
And we've never been out to LA at that point.
So we were like, yeah, let's go to California.
It's a good excuse.
So what happens from there?
So we play the show. A lot of it, we get even further of a boost on our social media pages, and we started getting a lot of corporate gigs to cover Beatles songs. My brother and I, oftentimes, even to this day, we still go out and do like duo gigs for like weddings and birthday parties and stuff like that.
Right.
And we've been able to raise money so that we can independently fund our own tour and album production and stuff like that. So
have you had any offers from labels and stuff? I'm sure people have
actually the funny thing is that the day we played Ellen, we did a pop-up show in LA on the Hollywood Strip. What was the name of the place? Do you remember?
What was it called? It was a dry bar called, I forget the name.
It'll come back to us. But we ended up going, and we packed out the show, and a good like 50% of the audience were all
booking agents, labels
from Interscope
heads.
Records, Empire Records, Atlantic,
Right.
just a bunch of like big.
So what
big
makes you
names.
decide to do it on your own?
There's a little mix of like wariness about, the music industry, how the stories, everyone's heard the stories.
Being indebted. I think it's always best to keep things as close to your chest and as in-house as possible. I mean, if you're trying to do anything that obviously takes an astronomical amount of money, then you want to like maybe lean towards doing a label. But I think that generally, like, the closer you can keep it to you, and the more you kind of maintain that, the band and the business yourself, I think the better off you're going to be in the long run. I've talked to other successful artists who have been like, man, I really wish I could have done my tours independently, because I wouldn't be in so much debt, or I wouldn't be, you know.
Also, as an up and coming band, like we would kind of at this point, these record labels would come at us with probably the short end of the stick type of deal. Mm-hmm. Whereas we feel that, not necessarily that we don't ever want to sign to a label, but we want to do things ourselves until we can get to a point where we're selling out shows constantly, and we have a leg to stand on when we're negotiating with these record labels.
Okay, so you are 2 kids growing up in basically a poor neighborhood in New York City. Mm-hmm. With a crazy mother, crazy family, let's be honest, right? Because they
crazy
all...
cool.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, I that's 100% how I mean it. There's crazy, it's crazy and genius is a fine line.
Yeah, that's true.
You find your way into these schools that are like, do your own thing. You're musicians, Ellen show, all this. Where's the business sense coming from all this? Because the whole time as you're talking about it, it's not... I know a lot of musicians, and sometimes I get shit on for shitting on musicians on this show, but like a lot of guys just sit back and kind of go, well, maybe someday something will happen.
Yeah.
You guys, it doesn't seem to me like, despite the fact that you had the viral video and that kind of like catapulted you, that almost to me just seems like a launch that you were prepared for.
Yeah, I mean, we've always had, I think the key to that was that Amiri and I have always visualized since we started the band, like we've always had an idea of where we want to go, where we see ourselves, and where we want to fit in. And I mean, we make mistakes all the time, business-wise. I mean, we're learning as we go along. But the important thing, I think, is that him and I, like, we have an idea of where we want to be and where we see ourselves. And we're building on an idea and a way to get there.
It's so funny that you say that, because I feel that we did have a feeling somewhere in the back of our heads that it would happen, but I wasn't completely sure if that was the way that it was going to happen, because to be honest, we were just busking to raise like pennies so that we could basically put out our first EP.
Right.
And I mean, I thought the Beatles thing might catch on, but we've been doing it for a good year and a half, and
before it even
nothing really super significant came out of it. So in a way, it was very we were ready, but in a sense, like at the time that it happened, it was something we definitely weren't expecting. We were.
Well, that's something you can prepare for, but it almost seems like this phrase I've fallen on recently is, I live my life like a well-prepared accident. You know what I mean? Like,
that's really cool.
That's a good one.
And it almost kind of seems like you guys were the same thing. Like, it was like, it wasn't a matter of like, oh, someday it would be nice to. It was like, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah, Amiri and I, since we started, we've always, like, even before we even knew how to play guitar that well, we used to air guitar and imagine ourselves like on shows and TV shows and debuting our albums and stuff. Like, we've always had like a crystal clear vision of where we want to be. Just getting there and is what we're still figuring out.
Oh, but yeah, definitely, yeah. But he said that the business part of it is definitely something we're like getting used to, because I was just telling
That's me, sorry.
I was telling our bass player Josh that we basically overnight went from like working these supermarket jobs to running our own company essentially. Now we have a manager that we're responsible for paying, or we have our band members that we're responsible for paying. you know, we've been doing commercials and stuff like that. So
Nice.
yeah, we recorded a cover of Michelle for Gucci.
Oh, sweet.
And we actually recorded a cover of Help for Google recently.
Nice.
Yeah.
When's that supposed to come out?
We don't have an exact date, but
Yeah,
it should be out
December.
very, very, very soon.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I can't
Yeah.
wait. So what's the future hold for you guys?
Well, we're actually in the process of recording our next album. We have a couple of singles that are going to drop. The full album should be done by early February, late January, and then the singles should be coming out within the next couple of weeks.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I am very excited to see what comes from you guys.
Thanks.
I'm lucky here because I get to talk to a lot of people, but I don't think I've ever talked to anybody that I've met that I felt was so prepared for like just a long haul in the entertainment industry. I'm very excited to see what comes from you guys.
It's so, again, it's just so funny that hear that, because from our perspective, I don't know about you, but I felt pretty unprepared. I mean not unprepared, but like just whoa, like this is happening now. It's just like it feels like this call from the universe where it's just like, don't ask any questions. You just gotta go.
Right.
Just go.
Yeah.
Like while it's hot, just go.
And you start to see all these things. It's another one of my stupid. It's. You'll have to excuse me. I don't know your religious affiliations, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but it's what I call shit that makes you believe in stuff that doesn't exist. Right?
Yeah,
So
right.
it's you start to see all these little things that you go, oh yeah, if I believe, that's what that would be. Right? Yeah, I dig it. I very excited to see what comes from you guys. It's been a
thanks
pleasure.
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, folks, that'll do it for this episode of the AVB Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go down and click on the subscribe button to make sure that you can continue seeing our episodes as we put them out. We do a lot of videos, and there's a couple of them here that we hope you'll enjoy. There's one up there that we think you might like, and of course, there's one of our playlists down there for you. Make sure you say hello to some of our sponsors in the links down below while you're there, and of course, you can find links there to today's guest and all of our other social media. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.